Nick Timothy is Theresa May's former Chief of Staff and the current Shadow Justice Secretary. The man who wants to run the justice system out of the country, and so when he posts something publicly under his own name, it carries weight. Last week during Eid, he posted this. Mass ritual prayer in public places is an act of domination. The Adhan, which declares there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger, is, when called out in public place, a declaration of domination. Perform these rituals in mosques if you wish, but they are not welcome in our public places and shared institutions. And then right at the bottom, it shouldn't happen again. Let's not talk about this, or there's a debate worth having. It's very, very clear. It shouldn't happen again. A senior Conservative MP, in writing, telling Muslims their public prayer is unwelcome and should be stopped. Now, the Conservative Party clearly read that, looked at each other and decided they had a problem. So they've sent out the spokespeople.
What he was saying is that scholars who have looked at Islamism, which is not the same as Islam, it's an aggressive, quasi-political endeavour, use public mass prayer to try and assert dominance. Now, Nick is having a debate, and Kemi's discussed this, and I think he's absolutely right on this. We're absolutely right. We should have a debate about how we deal with our long-standing commitment to freedom of religion and faith, and we're very, very proud of that. And people practice all kinds of religions and none in the UK. But what happens, particularly when the public practice of that faith butts up against some of the really strong fundamental traditions in the UK? So, for example, the segregation of women, basically the very clear assertion that women were second-class citizens in a public space.
Now, that's an interesting pivot, because we both just read Timothy's tweet and the word segregation isn't in it. What is in it is Muslim prayer being called an act of domination. Muslims being told their worship is not welcome in shared public places. Cleverly gets in front of the microphone and suddenly the whole thing is about women's rights. And then Jenrick does exactly the same thing.
Because it was a segregated event. I find it astonishing that the Prime Minister and the Community Secretary are going around essentially calling everyone bigots and racists.
Can we just have a bit of context,
let me finish my point, Lewis. For saying that a segregated event in one of our most important public spaces is wrong.
So why have they done this? Well, segregation is a more defensible argument than what Timothy actually wrote. The trouble is, they're not actually defending what Timothy wrote. They're defending something they've invented to replace it and hoping that you've not gone back to check. So watch what happens when Lewis Goodall notices.
Only about how women were treated.
No, it's not. No. And again, the point that Nick has made, the point that Kemi's made, the point I'm making, and I think this is an important conversation that we need to have.
He can't stay on the segregation line because the segregation line was never in Timothy's argument. It was an overnight patch job and the patch is starting to peel off. But okay, fine. Let's take them at face value anyway. If this is genuinely about gender separation in public places, a principle both Cleverly and Jenrick are apparently very passionate about, then it should apply consistently, right?
So in that case, if there were a mass Orthodox Jewish gathering where there can also be segregation of women, that shouldn't happen either.
Well, the point is we should have a debate about where we draw the line.
He said this should never happen again.
When there's friction between long-standing British tradition and the public demonstration of faith.
What is that friction?
Well, about the status of women, for example.
But as I say, that happens in other religions as well, and I haven't heard Nick Timothy talk about it.
So not in the public sphere. So
there have actually been examples.
So Jewish or Christian festivals or festivities rather in Trafalgar Square have not been exclusive in the way that this.
So this is, you point me to a single occasion when you have objected to gender separation in Orthodox Jewish religious practice in a public space. Because if you can't, why is the principle only activated when it's about Muslims?
It's not. I do not support, Lewis. I do not support the segregation of men and women.
So let's imagine
in public spaces, whether that is Christian, Jewish, Hindu,
separately.
Sikh, or Muslim.
They prayed separately.
I do
That's
not.
what Muslims do, just like Orthodox Jews do.
I don't like that personally. I don't like that personally.
So is that a very
But
British
it's
value?
very different.
Is that a very British value? You talk about British values. Is it a very British value to tell people how to conduct their own religion?
We're all allowed our own opinions.
But you're saying the
Lewis.
event, of course you
And
are. But you're saying these events shouldn't take place.
My view is that a fundamental British value is that men and women live on equal footing in our country. And I don't think we should be encouraging, as you seem to be, events being held in our most important public spaces where men and women pray or stand or associate separately. I think that's wrong.
But neither of them can do it. A principle that apparently burns so strongly that they'll go on LBC to defend their position. Yet before last Tuesday, it had never once occurred to either man. The principle only became visible when it was Muslims doing it. That's the whole story, really. Everything else is just decoration. And then Lewis Goodall puts the words of former Tories. There's Johnson, Braverman and Anderson, which then is followed up by a cracking question.
Zach Goldsmith.
So that's not. So are you claiming that is anti-Muslim?
No, I'm saying that he made fun of the way Muslim women dress in a way I don't think he would with any other religious group. And that's
you
the
need
point.
to read his writings.
Zach Goldsmith smears Sadiq Khan as an extremist sympathiser. Nusrat Ghani was told her Muslimness was making colleagues feel uncomfortable. Suella Braverman said the Islamists were running Britain. Lee Anderson said they were running London. And now Nick Timothy says that Muslim mass prayer is an act of domination. Can you name a single instance, just one, where a conservative frontbencher has used that kind of language about Christianity, Judaism, Sikhism or Hinduism?
Well, without going, I mean, you've clearly got your researchers to go through the back catalogue, because that spreads across decades. But maybe I'll just turn around to my very good friend Sajid Javid, former Chancellor, former Home Secretary, who was Muslim. So if your contention is the Conservatives have a problem with Muslims, you've got a very weird way of showing it, making Muslim, and not just one of the most influential people in the cabinet.
And cleverly his answer is Sajid Javid. We made a Muslim a cabinet minister, so we can't possibly have a problem with Muslim. That's the equivalent of saying, I can't be racist because I've got a black friend. Sajid Javid, who has publicly expressed his own concerns about the direction his party is heading in on exactly this issue. I mean, obviously cleverly doesn't mention that bit though. Then there's the moment in the Jenrick interview where the clip of Farage is played.
What about Muslims? He wants to ban them.
I've never, ever got involved in religious politics or racial politics in that sense at all.
And wouldn't.
And wouldn't, ever.
That's Nigel Farage, who in the same week called Muslim prayer in Trafalgar Square an attempt to dominate our capital city and our culture, never got involved in religious politics, whilst, actively doing it. Then there's the Sarah Pouchin incident, which I did make a full video on that one, so be sure to check that one out at the end of this video. Again, Jenrick is now in the position where he's got to defend that. And Lewis Goodall asks, what the joke is. Yeah, she opposes the burqa. Fine, plenty of people do. It's a legitimate political position, I guess. But what exactly are they laughing at? Jenrick really struggles to answer that one. So the question just sits there.
But in a week of a religious festival, in a week of a very important religious festival to millions of Muslims, our fellow citizens in this country, to have one of your MPs just off the cuff, just making a joke about how people in their communities dress. Why do it? Why do it?
Sarah Pouchin has a long-standing view that she doesn't support the burqa.
Which brings us back to where we started. Timothy's tweet is still up. Anyone can read it. You can go and have a look yourself. And what last week has shown us that his own party know full well that what he wrote was indefensible, because if they thought it was defensible, they would have defended his actual words. Instead, every single spokesperson got on air talking about segregation, a word that doesn't appear anywhere in the original post. They rebuilt the argument from scratch and presented this new version as if it was the original. The tell is they couldn't even hold a new version together under basic questioning. The consistency test, would you apply this principle to other faiths, collapsed immediately, every single time, because the principle was never really the point.